Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, hi there.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I have put up the agenda. There's only two agenda items, and they're both from me. So if anyone has any agenda items, feel free to add them on this link I just shared. We'll give it a few more. We'll give it till 12:05, and then we'll get started. Or excuse me, 5 past the hour. I don't know where everyone is. Yes. Matt, you don't have to ask me if it's okay to add agenda items, as you are a fantastic maintainer yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, just thought I'd check.
Yeah, get in there, Matt. Mess up that agenda. We love it.
I was going to reorder it. I thought, no, I'll just put it at the bottom.
This is a loose collection of things. Will be perfect. Usually I try to share these in advance. We had a company holiday yesterday at Consensus, so I was not working. Apologies for the delay. Anyway, let's well, I said one more minute and then I broke my rule. So we'll give it one more minute. Okay. Let's get started. I have shared the link to the agenda. In the agenda, there's antitrust notice, which you are expected to at least understand. We're also recording this meeting, so if you don't wish to be recorded, feel free to drop or keep your video off. And please mute unless you're speaking. Okay, so first order of business on the November 28th contributor call is the release process updates, and I'll pass off to Justin for this one.
Hey, folks. We've had a couple of wiki pages actually that exist. Let me pull up the wiki here real quick. Under the releases page, there's, I believe, 4 pages listed as proposals. And I don't know that we need to get into it right now, because I'm not sure that everybody's had a chance to read those proposals. But I'd like to get them out of the proposed stage and get a decision, go, no go on them. So specifically, let me pull that wiki page up here. They are under the releases section. There is 4 of them that start with proposal. Sorry, developing. It's under developing conventions. Developing conventions, releasing, and proposals for off-cycle releases, proposals for avoiding cherry pick releases. Should I just share? Does that make it easier on everybody?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Everybody see my browser?
Yep.
Great. So proposal burn-ins, proposal for off-cycle, delayed, cherry picks, quarter releases from main, etc. So I am in the process of refactoring our CI/CD process to make it work with GitHub Actions as opposed to Circle CI. We expect to have some pretty material savings as far as hosting costs. In order to do that, I also want to make sure that I'm aligned with our current thinking on releases. And so getting these out of proposal and into decision has been made, I think is important. So I want to bring this to everybody's attention. I'll be starting discussions in Discord immediately and hope to have this ironed out by the end of year because I'd like to roll out new CI/CD first thing next year. If there are any questions on this, feel free to reach out to me or any of these pages' authors. And the goal here is to, like I said, get decisions made and also kind of collapse down the number of pages that we have in flight. As you can see, our releases section of our wiki has 19 pages in it, and that's probably a bad sign. So I think we can do a little bit better. I'll pause there for a second. Questions, comments, concerns, refutations?
Sorry,
Fantastic.
not a
Go ahead.
comment. Could you please share the link?
Yes, I can.
Thank you a lot.
Stop sharing here and I'll post that in the Zoom chat. Okay. You got it, Renata. I think that's it for me as far as releases are concerned. Any
Just-
questions on CI/CD more generally? The goal
Well,
for, go ahead.
I was gonna say this is not really inside baseball, but the Teku team just went through a rework of their entire release process to automate it. And since
Yeah.
consolidating architecture anyway with Teku's process, is there anything that we want to try to mirror from that? I don't know if you've had a chance to review, because we could
I have not.
potentially just steal a lot of their fine work.
I love stealing things. So yes, I will touch base with them to see what they came up with and where there's overlap.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Any questions on release before we move to CI/CD? I know the release has been a messy thing for a while. We have the enterprise testing workstream separately going very slow in the same vein.
So did I correctly interpret that we got to yes in terms of we had this last quarter, we were trialing the burn-in for every release. Justin, is it fair to say that we got to yes on that for that being the new accepted process?
I think so. I mean, we've been doing it. It's been working pretty well. So I don't know why we wouldn't, I guess.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, silence equals assent, I think.
Yeah, I think the more controversial one is like the cherry picking and some of the source management related ones. I think those probably warrant deeper discussion. I think there's, there are some gaps when it comes to like, all right, once we have a release for for instance, what was the most recent one? The 10.7 line. We had a 0.1 release that had its own release branch. And then I went to do the 0.2 release. And, there were some things that were on that branch that weren't in main and vice versa. And so fast forwarding that branch on top of main was non-trivial, which was kind of a surprise. I thought that should have been pretty trivial. So I think there are some complications there that need to be ironed out if that is the method that we settle on. But right now, as it stands, I think we kind of have a little bit of a menu of options to choose from when you sit down to do a release, whether or not you're going to release from main or you're going to cherry pick, et cetera, et cetera. So those will need to be, I think, documented and simplified.
Yeah, it seems like we should have a paved path and an escape hatch. Like we only go into options when things go off the rails.
Yeah.
I guess I should say from an enterprise point of view, personally, we are actively working on building out some tests that we think would cover scenarios that are kind of quite enterprise specific in that kind of window. I think that we've talked about previously where when burn-in starts, it's kind of communicated on Discord, and that gives us a heads up that we could start running some of our own tests and highlighting any issues that we spot. So yeah, I think I'm just saying I think hopefully we'll be doing that more regularly for more of the releases as they happen.
Matt, would you be interested in pairing with me on the next release?
Yes, in principle, definitely, Justin. Yes, just in terms of timings and where it falls with kind of personal work commitments. But that all of that aside, then yeah, I think that would be good.
All right, because I would love to get some non-consensus maintainers involved with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right, wonderful. We'll coordinate offline.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We didn't cover CI, correct? That was still on the release topic. Take it away.
Sure. Let's go to that. So, corresponding with that, we have Circle CI that does our releases right now. We want to use GitHub Actions moving forward. Hyperledger uses GitHub Actions for just about everything. We want to simplify both the cost and the mechanics, I think, around how CI/CD happens. Things like, do you need to run the reference tests on every release? What is our spend and why is it so big? So we want to reduce that. We want to simplify it. And I think the CI/CD is pretty instrumental in doing that. And also with, the release process simplification is going to require some CI/CD changes, right? That's where the overlap is. For instance, last release, when we cut it, there was an overwrite of an older artifact, right? So that's a thing that we need to figure out why that happens, well, we know why it happens and how it happens, but we need to prevent it going forward. So there still are not quite enough guardrails in our release process to protect those artifacts. And that's something that we definitely need to fix. So again, to do that, there's going to be a testing branch. Right now I am working in a fork that's using GitHub Actions to build all the things. I'm going to push that to a branch that I'll name GHA main or something like that will still live in the Hyperledger Besu repository. And we can start using that as a test bed for the new release process. The specifics of how artifacts get built and published, I think, should be pretty simple. We only want to push tarballs and Docker images, and we only want to push those when an actual release is published from GitHub. We want GitHub to be the big button that somebody pushes to say, like, yes, the release goes out. And we want that release to be pushed with the same artifact that had been tested and the release staff had been working on. So those are some of the high level goals. I think there's a CI/CD dedicated channel in Discord, I thought. Let me just double check that. Besu release, Besu GitHub. I'll pick one and make sure that that's the place that we have these discussions in, and I'll be posting wiki pages and design docs that outline it. Questions, comments? Anybody hate GitHub Actions? Yeah. Okay. I think that's it then. I wonder if Matt's talking on mute.
No, I came off mute, then went back. I was just gonna say I don't like debugging GitHub Actions, but I don't really like debugging any CI/CD issues. So it's not a Git action specific statement.
Good enough.
So honestly, for GitHub Actions, it's usually not too painful because it's possible to install some tools from GitHub and debug it locally.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have been using the Act, I don't know if it's Act or ACT tool internally recently, and actually that's a pretty good way of debugging stuff quicker.
Great. That's awesome. If you wouldn't mind, maybe let's talk about it in GitHub. Sorry, the Besu GitHub channel. So if anybody's got fun links, oh no, that's all the automation. Never mind. Besu release.
Yeah, if you've not used Act, it's a pretty good tool for running GitHub Actions locally to run them through, test them, try them, debug them. Yeah,
Sorry,
so
what is it called again?
It's called Act. I don't know if you call it Act or if you call it ACT, but Act is the tool.
Okay. That's bad SEO. Nectos, get your, I found it. Run Nectos/Act. Run your GitHub Actions locally. Okay. All right, see if that helps. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, I think that brings us to the transaction pool discussion, where I'm hoping we get to have a fun brainstorm on a name.
Yeah, I put this on as a single item. It's kind of a couple of things in the enterprise space. One kind of very specifically about the legacy transaction pool, and the fact that it's kind of been evolving. I've been working with Fabio, putting PRs into Besu, specifically into the legacy pool, because it already had a lot of the capabilities that our enterprise users needed. It just, it benefited from some tweaks and things that weren't necessarily things that the layered pool, not necessarily things that fit as well into the layered pool approach. And for some enterprise use cases, I think it's felt that the layered pool, it probably doesn't bring as much benefit to a permission chain as it perhaps does to a public chain. So I guess maybe I should have put this as two bullets, because I've got one slide on sort of enterprise roadmap I was going to show. But is it worth, Matt, just having that initial chat about, there's been some discussion that the legacy transaction pool, as it's now known, could evolve in naming to be something related to an enterprise-oriented transaction pool, and that it would continue. We'd probably create a new synonym for the legacy pool and quickly phase out the term legacy, so enterprise users aren't put off too much by thinking they're on old tech. So maybe that's the place to start the discussion, then think about, maybe I'll show one slide on roadmap in a second.
I think you have as much time as you need, so go through whatever you'd like.
Okay, so let me tell you what, I'll put that one slide on the screen because it also shows that as a kind of an enterprise roadmap thing. I've got this is a slide I think I shared with Matt on a previous chat that he and I had. Can people see that?
Yes.
So this, I was going to coerce this into the format that I know some of the Besu or consensus slides use for roadmap stuff, but I ended up just putting out a list of bits and pieces that I guess have come up in discussions that we've had. So for people who are unaware, I work for a company called Kaleido, and we are a blockchain vendor, and we offer support packages for Besu, and we build and ship Besu to people who want to run it in more of an on-premise kind of environment, and we offer hosted Besu. So we have a lot of conversations with enterprise users, and a bunch of the stuff that's gone in around 23.10.2, maybe the odd one went in before that. Not all of these are kind of features that went into the product. Came out discussions with Fabio about some of the behavior around transaction selection gave what some kind of traditional enterprise shops thought of as maybe not totally intuitive, where one sender's transaction, the first transaction selected by during the selection stage, would cause the pool to go, well, I've got that transaction and I'll get all the other transactions for that sender ahead of other transactions that maybe arrived in the pool earlier, but are from different senders. So that's one example of a behavior that we've changed in the legacy pool. And similarly around sort of eviction orders being a little more first in, last out, so you're a bit less likely to get rid of transactions that would result in non-scaps. So I've been working with Matt Nelson and others kind of to help produce a roadmap that's a little more enterprise oriented, and that middle, I mean, the stuff to the right is a little further out, and the example kind of release versions are very just, finger in the air, but it kind of lists some of the things that are things you may have seen me mention or discuss on Discord, or things that we've been discussing with users. And one of those is the top item in that middle block, the idea of an enterprise transaction pool. And that in my view, I think would serve some, at least a couple of benefits. One is that, well, firstly, I don't think we will necessarily call it that, but something that would be easy to communicate with enterprise users. This is probably the better pool for you to use. But by having a clear demarcation that there are kind of two pools, one is a little more public oriented, one is a little more enterprise permissioned oriented. I think it might allow us to iterate on each of them quicker separately without having to consider, oh, but how does this affect the other pool and so on? Because there'd be maybe a slightly cleaner line between the two. And other things that have come up in the enterprise space in conversations with users have been, things like enterprise users expect to be able to just go in with a stick and prod the transaction pool and do stuff. Even if that means they have to do it on lots of Besu nodes to make sure it actually doesn't get, transaction doesn't get repercolated across the network. They kind of expect to be able to go and delete stuff, edit stuff, alter stuff, that kind of thing. So there's an area around transaction pool administration. Maybe some default values that today would cause noise if you upped the log level for certain types of message if it was a public chain. But for an enterprise user, they might really care about particular logs. They might really care if there's a peering change, because they expect their network to be super stable and they want to know about it if something changes, for example, in kind of the peering space. And the kind of right at the bottom, kind of bonsai for enterprise, quite what that looks like to give people reassurance that even though the move is towards bonsai, that they still get all of the kind of data availability and access to archive kind of information about the chain that that they might expect today from a forest-based chain. And then, the QBFT one is just kind of, I think, a missing support that, probably just a small bit of work to add Shanghai support to QBFT. So that's kind of what I've put together as a kind of a finger in the air enterprise roadmap. I've been working on PRs in these spaces. I don't intend to have time outside of my, I have various other kind of commitments in where I work. So I intend to move some of these things along. I'd very much welcome anyone who wants to look at them and critique them, comment on them, and or work on them. And also I just wanted to raise it. Maybe this is the kind of thing we might discuss. I don't know if it would be every contributor call, every other contributor call, just try and have a kind of a regular cadence of enterprise related discussion. Because I think we're seeing, we're certainly seeing a lot of uptake in Besu in the enterprise. For a lot of users, they think it's really, really good fit for purpose. They just have some of these requirements that maybe haven't had the priorities from public change that kind of enterprise orgs have. I'll stop there just to see what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, so I shared a epic in the chat. We keep pushing this epic off, basically using the next quarterly to set some kind of like profile, as you were saying, where you have sensible defaults based on a profile. So overarching could be something like staking, and you have like a Besu profile for staking that has like the minimal amount of chain data. It has bonsai, it has snap sync or checkpoint sync, and it has like relaxed peering things, for example. And then there's one for an RPC provider where you have tweaked options that are focused on, you don't really care about staking or execution performance, but you do care about having more items in memory for bonsai, for example. So maybe we tweak the default value of the historical block limit. One of those is listed as enterprise POA network. I would love to figure out what that means from a default perspective. Presumably it means the default transaction pool would be the legacy pool. It would be, like you said, we could have potentially even different class level logging for certain items, which would be very interesting. Yeah, I mean, to get to the meat of it, it's a product kind of level decision, but I don't think it's one that I should be prescribing. I think we should work together on this to see like what makes sense. I think consensus software would be more interested in we would be more interested in talking about some of those like infrastructure ones, so staking and RPC providers, but we don't have an opinion on like the other stuff. So I think I would love to put that on your little roadmap so that we can have kind of a line in the sand where you and I can work on it and we can actually progress, because right now it's just competing with a bunch of other priorities and I need a little bit of help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one question I had was, this is, any roadmaps are kind of a living document. This is just a local kind of shared Google Drive thing. And I'd like to put it somewhere that people can edit and update and contribute to. Is that the wiki?
Yeah, put that on the wiki. So under the wiki, we have the roadmap and planning section.
Okay.
If you go to the roadmap and planning page itself, which I'll share, it has the overall roadmap. What I might do is, I don't know if splitting these out, I don't actually want to create 2 pages because I think that'll confuse everyone and create more fractured story around what we're actually doing for enterprise, when in reality we're trying to consolidate everything under just a cleaner code base. So if you have a kind of now, next, later approach, I think you should just dump it under those now, next, later headings. Like the now one is the first one, and then you got it. But yeah, that would be awesome. I think using this roadmap and also putting private network items on this roadmap will do a lot to make folks feel warm fuzzies about using Besu in this context, because right now they might look at the roadmap and be like, this is literally all mainnet and there's no there's like no development on the private side, which is not true. So yeah, I would love for you to do that if you could dump that there.
Happily. Yeah, I'll stick it in there. Yep.
So does anyone on the call have a good idea of what a nice name might be for this pool? We discussed the context for enterprise doesn't really work, like just straight up calling it the enterprise transaction pool. It's kind of the leading answer that we have right now, but I I don't like it for a handful of reasons, but I think that it's absolutely, we can, discuss what we want to do. But does anyone have any ideas around it? I think the thinking was that like enterprises may be interested in the layered pool for some reasons. They may be running on mainnet. They may, not understand what that means. But then, for example, calling it something like a private transaction pool or like private network pool is also confusing. And basically is like, oh, do I have a segmented transaction pool? Is it private? Does it have something to do with Tessera? We don't want to confuse folks in that regard. But if anyone has any genius ideas, I mean, maybe.
What about something? Oh, sorry, Amazon.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. I was just thinking something like permissioned pool or something, because Matt mentioned that they want like to have more control over the pool regarding deleting and changing and this kind of stuff.
I was going to suggest trusted pool. Yeah.
Yeah, or something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are ones that we really should avoid. Like Matt said, privacy, just really we should stay clear of that. I think those suggestions are good ones. Enterprise certainly doesn't feel like it's a good fit from my point of view, because I think it sounds a little too kind of like, well, we mustn't use the layered pool then. And one suggestion I had, which I didn't really like any more than I think Matt liked it, was that the layered pool is kind of described by its implementation. So I wondered about it being described more around how it works than the use case. So I kind of thought about things like an ordered pool, because things are a little more kind of first in, first out behavior, or maybe like you said, trusted or
fair pool. You could call it a fair pool if it's FIFO.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really keen that it's not a term that makes the layered pool sound like you don't want to use it. I guess fair sounds probably from a transaction selection point of view a little more like what it's doing. I wondered about kind of those terms around FIFO.
FIFO's pretty good too.
Sorry, say again?
I was just saying FIFO is pretty good too. Like if you want to keep it functional as opposed to intent, right?
Yeah.
FIFO would probably be the most apt description.
It could cover, FIFO could cover well one aspect of the gas-free network, where this is one of the main point that we try to make it better. So to support better gas-free network, where you expect a FIFO strategy. The FIFO doesn't work well if you have a private network which use gas price market, because in that case, probably you expect the higher the gas, the fastest the transaction will be selected. Then I want to highlight some more differences between mainnet and private enterprise use. On mainnet, most of the complexity is put in trying to avoid some kind of attacks, since you don't trust who sent the transaction. While on enterprise, this probably is not important or less important. So one other aspect of what that I saw doesn't, for example, the layered transaction pool doesn't work well in private network is the throughput. While on mainnet, the throughput is limited to few transactions per second. On enterprise, we could have many more transactions, and a simpler pool like the legacy one that we want to rename is much easier. It's much easier to handle many more transactions there than on the layered one. So say, I don't want to suggest because maybe I'm not very good at naming, but maybe trusted is a good option. Second could be enterprise, yes. I find FIFO limiting because another could be throughput optimized, for example. So yes, this is my take on this one. No one prevents to also have a more specific transaction pool. Maybe that one is for gas-free networks. That is FIFO, and it's very simple. And another one is for private network that are gas-free market.
Yeah, I wondered if a term around the fact that it's probably going to evolve to have it's more likely to have, I think, more kind of levers and buttons for people to push to control the behavior. I wondered if kind of administered or configurable or something around those terms would be generic enough and loose enough that it kind of distinguishes it as being kind of, you're going to have more control around the behavior you do want. And so it would still have gas price taken into account if that's what you're doing. But trusted to me sounds like it's a little too much in the, I don't know, maybe the implication would be that it's closely related to the permissioning that you have set up. And I guess by implication it would be, but I guess I'd certainly be in favor of the least committal term that kind of doesn't paint it into a corner that then makes everyone assume it's really for a very, very particular job.
Yeah, it does kind of conflate with the consensus mechanism, doesn't it?
I wondered if administered as a name for a pool sounded too vague.
I mean, you're kind of onto something there. It's like it's controlled, right?
Yeah.
One thing we could do is go in the other direction where we just say mainnet for like the layered pool, and then just call the other pool non-mainnet. Probably solves the majority of our problems because I don't know, the LTE case makes it confusing because we'll be using the layered pool on like layer 2 networks. So it's also I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the downfall of a use case kind of description. Is it's very hard. You can always find an edge case where technically you're doing this, but actually the pool you want is this one. Personally, I think my priority would be a name sooner rather than later is probably more important than exactly what the name is, just so that we can move away from legacy in conversations with people as quickly as possible. Now that layered and legacy are the two choices. But is it something that I should try and collate some of these discussions into a kind of a discussion / vote on Discord?
Yeah, that sounds good. Just to recap, so for me, the layered one is for public network where you need to, where you don't trust to send transactions, then you be very careful and want to prevent denial of service attack. While there is the necessity for other pool that prioritize the fairness or the throughput. And those are the pool that we need to better support now. Then for the name, I said before, probably I'm not the best person to choose, but I can say contribute to the discussion.
Yeah, I just wondered if sequenced was a term that people thought might work, because it's sort of about transaction sequencing rather than the layers of the layered pool having their uses.
Maybe
as ever. Yeah. Sorry.
around like unsenders, like you
I
said,
like that a
trust,
lot.
coming back to trusted, because it's like if you have known senders, you can lax a whole bunch of options. But if you have unknown senders, which is also L2s and mainnet, then you like yeah, maybe like permissionless senders, trusted senders is like a name we could use for the transaction pool, because it's pretty succinct. It describes what's happening. And then we can write about it in the documentation in a pretty coherent way, where it's like, if you're running a network that's permissionless, use this approach. If you are federating the RPC to access the pool, use this approach.
I kind of like sequenced and layered better, actually.
Okay.
I think
the
because
problem I have is that layer doesn't really describe what's happening on mainnet whatsoever. It's just a description of the implementation, whereas sequential is a description of the use case. You have sequential transactions. I guess you're right. I mean, it describes the pool itself as well, but layer doesn't really like, how would I know well, we could provide the profiles. We can go back to the
so
profile.
you tell me though, Matt, because I look at that as a feature and not a bug, but I might be looking at it from a developer perspective as opposed to a user perspective, right? So like right now, I'm kind of vibing with Matt's suggestion where he says that like, let's describe the mechanics of it as opposed to the use case, right? And to me, sequence pool and layered pool embodies that. But if we do want to capture the use case, then we should change both of them, I think.
One point that links this to the profile. So the way we can just set a profile to choose a bunch of preset could let's say make the name less important, because if you set the profile mainnet, you don't need to know the name of the transaction pool. If you set the profile to enterprise, the transaction pool will be set to the new name by default, so the user don't need to choose the actual name. So I think we can also, if we do a better job having the profile, the operation mode, probably the name of the pool is not so important for the average user. Maybe only the advanced user will need to tune it or change it. But so I don't know if what I said makes sense. So instead of focusing on the name of the transaction pool, we can focus on the profile and the preset.
I think I would agree with that principle, if only for the reason that I think not many people are going to spend hours wondering what the two values mean. They're probably either going to know or they're going to look in the docs, and the docs is where you can give all that context we've just been talking about around, which is probably the best one for your use case and which is probably the best one for other use cases, without having to be sort of completely black and white about it. And so I certainly subscribe to the point that I don't think it's essential exactly what the name is, because it's never going to describe everything you're trying to get across. And if at some point we have profiles which mean you really don't have to care about it, then all the better.
Okay, so maybe we just do sequentialed and layered in the short term, and then we have the profiles laid out more concretely for either 24.1.0 or 24.3.0, or excuse me, 24.4.0.
I think that gets my vote. Certainly, yeah.
I
Anyone
would vote
else?
for it. Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Uh,
So
uh, Sorry,
Farhan.
but I don't want to add another name, but I was thinking about flat and layered. This is mostly a technical distinction because the legacy one is actually using a single layer, so is in most sense is flat. Than that. Just saying that.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of the fact that it really is about that. Really does to kind of describe it much more clearly about implementation. I wonder if it doesn't give you enough of a hint as to what the behavior you're going to get is.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you about the features of that you get.
Yeah,
Is just a name, and I prefer to have something that tell about the feature, but it's not easy because there are many of them to choose.
yeah.
To choose one.
So at minimum, we need a new name. In the short term, we need a new name and a documentation page update, a PR to the docs.
Do you want me to put a short vote out for those last couple of choices just to get a few more opinions about?
Yeah, the name.
Maybe it's just the flat versus sequence kind of thing for people to just give a bit of thought to in Discord, so we don't give them loads of choices.
Yes, sorry, I'm just taking the notes in the contributor call notes. So the short-term plan is, Matt, you're going to share your findings and ask for feedback in Discord.
Sure.
We're going to come up with a new name for the legacy pool. We're going to update the documentation to reflect that name and probably have some new color around the layered pool, or excuse me, around both pools to talk about use case. Update the documentation to address pool use cases. And then the long-term plan is bundle the pools with default updates and profiles. And I will link to the epic. Let's see. Okay, cool.
Great. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. It was really yeah, really good discussion. Thank you.
Anyone else on this topic? Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. I think we can go to an open forum. So anyone have anything that they want to discuss? Any reviews that people need, maybe, or anything that wants a special set of eyes from contributors to other contributors? Okay, we will call that as a no. Wait 20 more seconds. Gary, the release is accelerated to Friday.
I don't know
Um,
if it's accelerated. I think that's on cadence, but
Yeah, I think that's the normal
yes.
timeline.
Yeah, I think that's normal timeline. So yeah, good point. When we say Friday night, we're talking about we start the bacon, release candidate goes in, it cooks over the weekend. So Matt, I'll reach out to you. If you can make it, great. We can work something out. Awesome. I know it's short notice if we can't. If not, rain check for next time.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Justin. Yeah. Give us a shout and we'll catch up offline.
Sounds good.
Is there anything that we think we want to get into this release? Because it's, I don't know if this is going to be the last release for the year, but we definitely have a lull towards the end of the year when holidays,
Good.
holiday season is in flight. Is there anything that we want to make sure we get in before the release is cut? I'll take that as a no.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, we can chime in on Discord in the release channel if anything is needed. All right, I think that's all. Thank you, folks. The recording will be on the wiki page in a little while, and we'll see everybody on Discord.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks, y'all.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye bye.